You are now listening to the Soulshine Podcast. This is the Soulshine Podcast. Hello. Welcome to Soulshine Podcast. If you are new here, you are in for a wonderful treat. We are in season 2, and I am so excited about season 2 because unlike season 1, where it was just me talking about all of what I've been through, I am bringing in guests, and I'm bringing in guests from all over the United States. And so I have gotten some really wonderful people to come and join me and talk about their story, talk about their grief and their losses, and also their redemption, and how walking in alignment with God has just opened up doors that they could have never imagined open for them, but also what those losses look like. So I'm excited about the conversations that we're going to have and about the people that are going to join us. So Soulshine, you guys get ready. I have a very, very special guest today. And I invite all of you to write in questions so that when my guests come, we can have them answer those questions. And so without further ado, I am going to introduce Miss Debbie Hutcherson Everett. She is a pastor, a grief and life support advocate. She stands in the gap for those in mourning of spouses and family members. She lost her aunt to an aneurysm, and her dad, the best friend, died 8 days later of a broken heart. She lost her husband as well as grieved many relationships, even her womanhood, when she had to have a hysterectomy at 35. Her mission is to tell her story, support those in need, and change the legacy of those around her with Legacy Change Coalition. Hi, Miss Debbie.
Hello, Jasmine and Soulshine. How are you, my girl? How are you?
I am doing wonderful, and I am so glad that you are joining me. I'm excited to be here. We are going to talk about a lot of really, really good things, some things that I'm personally experienced. And what I like to do at the start of the show is talk about like RIPs. So something that we miss, something that we used to have, and it can be a person, it can be a thing, it can be an object, whatever that comes to mind that is something that you just miss.
Something that I really, really miss. I really miss my childhood. I had a very deep childhood experience. My grandfather was the first experience that I had as a kid with loss. And when I was looking at coming to do this podcast, I wanted to really express this with my first experience with grief. Being in the third grade, my brother and I were walking home, and we saw a lot of cars in the yard. And as we were walking home, going into the house, the scene was very strange because everyone was crying. And I remember distinctively that childhood habit of coming in, running in, getting Kool-Aid and a snack. That was taken away. And it seems strange, but as I was preparing for this, as I do when I'm going to anyone with grief counseling, praying about it, thinking about it, meditating about it, to really get substance and be able to have something to say to change people's lives, I wanted you guys to know that one experience in the third grade now has existed in every single time that someone has passed away. That memory comes back, that it is something that is snatched away from you. So you don't only just lose a person, you lose that experience. You lose that Kool-Aid and a snack, and then you have that mark for the rest of your life, like that's something that I'm gonna miss. So that's my RIP, every time. And I'm really, really heavy on that, even in the mental health field that I'm in now. In AFL, I provide for a client. I'm real big on Kool-Aid and a snack right now, Miss Jasmine. All because
Yes.
it gives you a peace of mind and comfort for me, even being able to give that to someone else. So that's a great question, and thank you for asking.
You're very welcome. Yes, I find myself missing little things that I used to experience. My grandfather is actually in a nursing home, and because he has Alzheimer's and dementia, and he would run away, and so we had to provide a safe space for him. And so he was a very avid reader, but I miss being able to sit on the couch and him tell me about the books that he was reading. And so because of that, I've started to pick back up
Wow.
reading. And it's been quite enjoyable. I remember him telling me that when he would read, it would be like he would escape to another place. And I would, as a kid, you're like, I don't want to read. Reading is almost like a punishment. But now that I've gotten older, I'm like, I actually enjoy reading. And it does. It's a moment of, I can't always get free time because I have kids, but it's a me time where I can actually sit and read a book or read an article, and it just takes me to another place.
Yes.
And so I love a good Kool-Aid and a snack.
Yes. And when you're reading, and that it's also building that part of your brain and giving you that opportunity, to get to experience something different, even if it's just in your imagination. So kudos to you. That's
Yes.
great, Jasmine.
Thank you. What have you experienced more loss, grief from? Like what would you think? I know you said that in the third grade is your first experience, but have you experienced it more in a sense of loss or in more of like grief?
So for me, it kind of happens simultaneously. Um, my grandparents on both sides, uh, they used to be what we call a little superstitious. They would always say death comes in threes, and it
Mm-hmm.
would actually happen that if a family member passed on my father's side, it would happen in threes. And then a few weeks later, it would happen on my mother's side. And it would be simultaneously, and both sides were kind of large families. So it always felt like there was something always being taken away. Put all of that together with the fact that, it was a dysfunctional family. My grandmother, my brothers, and I were passed along to, grandma this one and grandma that one and aunt this one and aunt that one. So it was always a tug of war and a juggling of the village raising the children. And so when I say simultaneously, I literally mean, we would lose a family member and at the same time lose a place to stay. We would lose a family member and lose our friends because we were constantly moving from household to household, and moving from community to community. So it was taunting, and nothing was, normal. So at the same time, when we were dealing with that, I honestly know for a fact that everything happens for a reason, that God makes no mistakes, and that life gave me a lot of lessons. They say a hard not life. Life gave me a lot of experience to go into this field, to learn and get qualified and get the skill set to be able to help others from that experience, even as a young child and a teenager and a young adult, to be able to say that simultaneously we were losing people and losing property, losing possession and losing loved ones. So at the same time, Jasmine, it was going on.
Yes. I can't even imagine, because that in itself creates, that instability, right? And then you're having to reset and as a child, that's hard, right? New communities, new people, new struggles, and that carries on until you get to an adult. And so being able to take that and make it into a positive, a lot of people aren't able to do that. They get stuck in that, well, this happened to me and now I have to be this way because this happened to me. And so one of the things my dad would say before he passed away, and I didn't know why he was saying it, and I thought it was like, we'd be randomly in the store and he'll be like, if it's not a lesson, it's a blessing. And I'm like, Daddy, what are you talking about? And so that's actually like my tagline, because once he passed away and I actually started to think about what he was saying, it's either a lesson or a blessing. And like I tell people, sometimes it's both, right? Sometimes you get a lesson and a blessing out of it, but it's either one of those, and you have to decide what you do with that. And so that part is always hard, because naturally we want to lean probably more towards the negative and not actually see the lesson and try to take that and learn from it.
And it's so much easier to lean towards the excuse. It's so much easier to lean into the "somebody did me wrong" song. It's so much easier to lean towards the pity party. But because all you're doing is pointing the finger at someone else. But it's easy to do that. It's hard to face the reality and say, I'm hurting. It doesn't feel good. I don't like it, but I'm not going to stay here because I know God. And I might not know him as well as others, but I know him well enough to know he cannot fail me. I have enough faith in him that he cannot fail me. And I know that word says that he will never leave me. He will never forsake me. And I might not believe like someone else, but I'm going to try my best. And I'm going to get in there. And it's easy to waddle in pity, but don't take the easy way out. And that's the kind of counselor or the advisor that I am. You have to work. You have to desire. And you have to decide, I'm going to get up. Yes, I'm hurting. No, it doesn't feel good, but I'm worth it. I'm worth it.
And that's And I tell myself now when I wake up, because I suffer with anxiety and depression. And so when I wake up, I'm like, okay, Jesus, okay, Lord, I'm not here with you. I'm not in heaven. So I still got work to do down here, because if I was done and my job was complete, I would be up with you. I would be gone. And so that gets me motivated, though, to start my day and actually, be excited about what's to come. And so I try to live in that space. Now, some days are easier than others. And part of where I'm at now, because I'm getting ready to embark on a new journey. I have many things going on. I'm in mom, I work, I'm in school, but in the next couple of weeks, I'm actually going to have a hysterectomy, and I'm 34. And so, I have two healthy, beautiful children. I have a 14-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter who is a mini version of myself, and that scares me sometimes.
Okay. Do you know my daughter?
Yes, and she is definitely a mini version of you. Like, I seen a picture of you guys with her brother. It was you, but I thought it was her. she was like, no, that's my mom. I'm like, now I get it. People say I look like my mom and they think she might say, but I was like, oh, she like spit you out. There is like, you are her reincarnated all the way. And she's just like, I get it all the time. I'm like, I really thought that was you. But yes, so how did it feel when you had, your hysterectomy, and, did you feel like you lost some of your womanhood? Because that's where I'm struggling. Although I don't desire to have any more kids, I got my tubes tied shortly after I had our daughter. So I'm not having it because I've been able to have kids, I know you had, your children. So how did that feel, losing that part of yourself?
Okay. So Jasmine, now, since you do know my daughter, you do know that Miss Debbie is Miss Debbie, okay? In the beginning, I was elated to have my hysterectomy because my husband and I, just like you just said, we were done with children. I was of age 35. I was completely happy. I didn't have to worry about the cycle. I didn't have to worry about the cost of all of the other accessories that we have to participate with. No more pain, no more any of all of that. I was completely satisfied until I started with the side effects of going into early menopause. And Jasmine, when I started getting cold sweats and hot flashes, baby, baby, baby.
It wasn't.
The rings and all of the assistance that they try to give you to replace all of the hormones, all of the estrogen that leaves your body. Now, it was many moons ago. It was 2006 when I had mine. So I know that the medical, profession has enlarged and is so much better now. So they probably have more meds and better meds out for you guys now. But at the time when I had mine, the best way to get estrogen back into your body was through the ring, the vaginal ring, and that did not work well for me. So I just cold turkey, no patch, no estrogen, no nothing, because that ring just broke me out. I had acne. It was like I was 13 all over again. So my experience was not pleasant with that, but I didn't feel like I was void of my womanhood because I was satisfied with the fact that I was no longer in pain and that my husband and I had made the decision together. And it's a myth that most women sexually have issues. That's a myth.
Yes.
That's a myth.
Okay.
Praise the Lord. That's a myth.
I asked the doctor, and initially she wasn't able to give me an answer. And I was like, okay. So then I circle back, and the research that I've seen does say that it's a myth. So I'm like, okay, that's a good thing.
It's a myth. I wish I had known it myself prior to, but I did not know. I believed it when I first went in as well. But I will tell you this. When you come out of the surgery and you're going to feel one way, you're going to feel amazing, and you're going to feel strong, and your faith is going to carry you through. Jasmine, obey the doctor. Do not listen to yourself, because most women, and I've been doing research and I've been looking at, the studies, but most women, and I'm going to be honest with you, especially African American women, we do not follow the directions and instructions for our healing after our hysterectomy. Our proper care of the aftercare of the hysterectomy is even more important than we ever thought it should be. And it is because your body is healing and actually coming back together again. It is very serious. And that is why it is recommended that you are on bed rest. So please take that seriously. And add that to your message about the hysterectomy, that a lot of women, that aftercare is so important. Husbands, the aftercare. Children, the aftercare. The rest, Jasmine, It is so important. So please remember that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I am notorious, but I have expressed intensively to my family. So I'm fortunate. I get to work from home, and obviously I work from home, but I told my manager and I talked to her and I said, the doctors recommended, and this is how I know I have a good manager, because she was like, take the 6 weeks. She was like, now, if you think you feel better in 3, but take the 6 weeks, because who knows, right? And you need that rest. And even though you're at the computer, just that position, all of that. And so I was encouraged by that, because she could easily been like, why you need 6 weeks off? You work from home. All you gotta do is roll over to the, you could essentially do the work in your bed. And so, but not only do I want to take the time to heal in like physically, but mentally too. So this 6 weeks is going to be a rest of my mind. I'm still gonna, think of things, but like really be able to get more intentional with my time with God. Like I have a plan of how, my morning. I'm fortunate my husband will take off, and so he will be making sure the kids get to school. So I'll get up and, in a perfect world, I'll have my mushroom coffee and my time with Jesus. Because yes, your daughter has me on the mushroom coffee. Yes, she does. And so I'll have that time, and then, just resting and really getting into a really good book. So I have my time planned out. Now, I am bad. And so you're going to have to check in on me and make sure that I'm doing good, because I feel like by 3 weeks, I'm going to be like, okay, I feel good. I'm ready to go do something.
And especially driving.
Yes, that's what the doctor said. She was like, you are going to feel better. She's like, you will feel better, because obviously,
you're gonna.
But she was like, do not lift and do not drive.
I promise.
Okay.
You, I did it. I was disobedient. I did it, and I still pay for it now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will listen. I will be very, very, very intentional with with what I do. Now, have you ever had to detach yourself emotionally from grief?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I actually eulogized my mother.
Wow. I did my uncle's eulogy. That was hard.
And
I can even imagine.
Yes. And
I imagine that had to be hard.
I did it out of obedience, because my mother, listen, my mother told me, when I die, you're going to preach my funeral. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And I wrote, yes, ma'am. Always saying, I'm never, the Lord, her pastor is going, my mother.
Right.
My mother passed from COVID, during COVID, in New York. The whole church was shut down. Nobody was coming out. So I ended up.
No.
And I would have done it either way, because my mother, I know, like, obedience is better than sacrifice, but because I said that I would not lie, and I would not. So yeah, I had to spiritually have a conversation. Just, God, I'm your child. I'm going to preach your word, and then I'm going to be her daughter. And I literally, it was, I have to separate. And it happens a lot, especially being in ministry and having the heart of the people, and loving people and knowing people and building relationships. When I'm on the clock, as I like to say, when I go visit family members and go visit friends and go visit, and giving counsel with grieving, with the people that are grieving and bereaved. I have to, because I'm very sensitive and I'm a waterhead, I cry at the drop of a dime. And so it is, yes, I have to detach that and, and let God get the glory and let him strengthen me to be able to do what he called me to do, to minister, and then give me the time to be human.
Right. Well, I think now more and more that I speak about my losses and just my own mental health struggle, I've had to detach. If not, I would be a watery mess every time I spoke. And there's a level, and I never realized it until I've shared my story a little bit more. And I realized, like, in that moment, I'm detached. And even when I tell people about the losses, you can see their faces just be like, oh, how are you still even standing? And I'm like, I mean, at some point, this isn't like my life. This is my story. And what I've been through is my testimony, right? And so I can share it because I've done the healing that I need to do to get to that part. But the reality is that I'm really having to detach. And there's moments where I detach. And it's okay because what was hard for me in the beginning, because there's no like roadmap for how you should grieve, was I felt guilty about that when I was detaching from it and having to talk about it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not honoring them in the way, like I should be sad. And it's like, no, you don't have to be sad. Like every time I wake up and tell my story and encourage and show hope, I am honoring them and I am still grieving them. And some days I am absolutely okay. It's been harder for me with my grandmother because it's still so new. She passed away in September, so it's still fresh. And yes, and with her, she like genuinely was so invested in like the things that I did. Like I was her wildest dream. Like I got to do things that she never could have even imagined. So when I would tell her about the things going on in my life, she would be like, let me write it down so I can tell the church ladies the right things. And so I miss that part of being able to, like my dad and my uncle, they were like that too, but they spent a lot of time in and out of jail. And so they weren't always constant in my life, but my grandmother was constant. And she genuinely cared about, I mean, we talked almost every day, and she knew when I was off, and spiritually she could give me wisdom. And so when I think about her, it gets hard, and I have to like kind of almost detach because I don't want to be, break down, because it's something that's like, I miss her and those connections that we had. And so detaching from grief, I think, is absolutely necessary. If not, I don't think we would be able to move.
You wouldn't. And then you also have to be mindful that you and grateful that you have the ability to detach, because some people are still stuck, Jasmine, and not only in grief. Some people are stuck and they want to stay stuck in other areas of their life. And grief, when people die, it has become a custom for people to take that as an opportunity to use it as a crying, mourning, pity party. And it's not even real most of the time. If you treat them right while they're here, then the process will not be as detrimental when they're gone. Praise ye the Lord.
Oh, yes. I tell people that all the time. I can rest easy because the Bible says honor your mother and your father. And I did that. I mean, to the very last time that he was seen, I was the last person to see him in our family because he had a psychosis and he needed to go to the hospital. I took him to the hospital. I stayed with him. And have you ever experienced a time where you're in a moment and you're like, Lord, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't understand why I'm supposed to be here, but I'm in the right place. And I felt that. Yes, and I felt that with him. So when he passed away, of course I was sad. Of course I was hurt. I think the the suddenness of
Yeah.
it and it just not being what we had expected, I think that hurt
Yeah.
more. But I knew as his daughter that I had honored him and I had done the things that he had asked for me and I respected him. And I slept really good. I mean, in the sense of like, I wasn't hooping and hollering and passing. You know how it goes at the, funerals. And it's like, well, if you went to go see them when they were alive, it wouldn't hurt as much. You were hurting because of the guilt. But I also watched my uncle, who him and my dad were not on a good terms. Because of that, he struggled and it carried on for him. And he had such a hard time getting out of that. And that's what ultimately made him pass away, because he backslid and he went back into drugs and he couldn't grasp that grief was a part of it and that he had to kind of go through all of the emotions. He stayed in anger and he stayed in depression, and then he did not have healthy coping mechanisms. And so it was hard to watch. It was like watching a train wreck, but it also was one of those that like me and my grandmother were also going through it. So it was like, I'm trying to keep myself up on a day to day. So how do I, help you and encourage you? And so we did what we could, but ultimately, he passed away, and I think he just gave up too at the end. So with all of the losses and the journey that you've been on with your losses and your grief, how has faith helped you in your journey?
Without it, I wouldn't be here. I know without a shadow of a doubt, being saved, and knowing God is the only reason that I'm here, because of who he is in me, to me, and for me. But the way my life has been, I wouldn't have made it without him. With the way that the people that have been snatched away suddenly, and the way loss has taken place, the way the life I have had, my journey, my story, my transparency of my testimony is that if it were not for God, and that's why I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of any of it, because, and I feel like he anointed me to be transparent about it all, so that people will really see that it is the faith that I have in God that has kept my mind, because of the traumatic experiences of the loss, you have to know that it was God that kept this woman, because without him, I would be just a bed bug, just as the old folks say, crazy as a bed bug. Yeah. My faith in God has strengthened me so much, and I'm just grateful for that.
And that, for me, I was just talking to someone about this. When we've gone through things as you get older, just in life, right? Because I remember being a teenager and even a younger little girl going to church, right? Because Granny said we had to go to church. We was in church all day. And even as a teenager, still going to church, but not really fully understanding it. But that foundation of him, like, had I not had that foundation, when I went out and I was in the world and having no more Granny, right? Like, Granny's prayers is still there, but they not I got to pray now, right? I have to do it. And so, but having that foundation, but it's nothing but God. I mean, there is so many times that I look back over the course of my life and I'm like, but if it wasn't for God, and so when people ask me, how could you have lost all of this in you're this age and you've lost some really significant people, and it's like compound, right? Like, it's been back to back. And I'm like, it's God. If I was standing in my ownness, I would be a hot mess and a bed bug, crazy as a bed bug, okay? Because I couldn't do it on my own. And I have no shame in saying that. And I have learned that the more I just lean into it and say, okay, God, I have surrendered it
All of
all.
it.
All
All
of
of
it.
it.
I mean, even the things that I don't even know that Lord, I give it all to you. The amount of peace that I
Yes.
have is just it's overwhelming because I don't have to worry about how it's going to work out. It's going to work out. I don't know how, but it's going to work out.
That is all I know. And that is the blessed part is I just know it's going to work
Yeah,
out.
it's going to work out. Well, I like to have a little point in the episode where I kind of talk about grief in the news. And so this week I have found an article. Well, Vanetta helped me find this article. And it's about Black women and hysterectomies in the
Okay.
South. And so part of my studies as while I'm in school is actually looking at the disparities that happen in African American people in general, but especially women and women's health. And so Texas is considered the South, but this particular article looked at women in Alabama. Was it Alabama? I believe it was Alabama. And so it talked about this very rural area. Yeah, it was Alabama. And so it's a very rural area. These women don't have really great access to women health. So they're getting, because they're having, fibroids or any type of gynecological issues, the doctors are basically saying you need a hysterectomy. The other part of that, though, too, is these doctors come. So these are like residents, right, that come and they need so many years of experience in either a rural area or just in a place where they can practice medicine. And so because of that, they're having and they're performing these hysterectomies really as practice and then leaving, right? They're staying there 2-3 years. So there is no real follow-up care for these patients, right? Because they don't have that access in their actual local area. They're having to drive several hours to even get that care. And statistically, it shows that 65.4% of hysterectomies in Black women, the main diagnosis is uterine fibroids. And that's why I'm actually having my hysterectomy, because I have a lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's been causing me a lot of discomfort, irregular, bleeding, just the things that make it not fun for you as a woman. And so, but compared to 28.5% for white women. So it's showing that over half of Black women are getting these hysterectomies compared to white women, which I think is alarming because at the end of the day, our health isn't just as important. And it also went on to show like the mortality rate for women who deliver babies, right? And that is very, very high compared to white women. And so for me as a Black woman, I always like to, obviously I'm inclusive, right? I don't ever want to think other people don't matter, right? Like let me say that out there now. They do, but I'm a Black woman and I live in this space. And I know personally, I've seen it in healthcare, like directly, how there is a disproportion to how we are treated, women and men, and even in the space of mental health. And so do you have any words of advice to other Black women undergoing any type of treatment? You said it kind of in the beginning, but is there anything else you would like to highlight?
I do. I would like for, outside of the hysterectomy, I would like for us as Black women to also really pay close attention to how we are running, to spending our money to change who we are, what we look like.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm noticing, and I'm transparent. So one of the things that happened with me in 2006 as well with my hysterectomy was that year, my back, I have always had really, really bad issues with my back, and I had to have a breast reduction. And my breast reduction was in the month of April. of 2006. My hysterectomy
Okay.
was in the month of November of 2000. So you're talking
Oh.
to a 35-year-old woman who was
Mhm.
a triple F when I had my daughter. And so over half of my breast tissue, they took 7 pounds of breast tissue. And then I had a total hysterectomy in the same year. And for me, when you asked the question about my womanhood, I was more, in the words of my mother, messed up about my breast reduction than I was about my hysterectomy, because I was accustomed to heavy breast. And then I went to a size C, and it was for medical purposes and not cosmetic surgery. And
Yeah.
I was grateful because medically it helped me, but I had to go through an entire process as a woman, looking and feeling and being completely different. And that takes a
Mm.
lot on you. And I don't want us as women, Black women, to be so caught up on what we look like on the outside that we forget about what's going on the inside. Because we're actually the ones that are committing a loss on the inside of who we are. And that's a grief that we don't need to do. We are who God made us. And the Bible says that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And so when we start learning how to adhere to what the word of God says about us, when we start learning how to allow God to speak to us and teach us how to love ourselves and entreat ourselves and spoil ourselves and be creative within ourselves and build ourselves, we will then learn how to counsel ourselves. We'll learn how to go in there and be able to be that grief counselor for that little girl that's in us. Be able to be the grief counselor for that woman that's still suffering from heartache. You know, we have to become stewards of who we are for ourselves so that we can be productive for somebody else. That's my little last tidbit.
I mean, we just can go ahead and close it down. That right there was a word.
I just
Okay.
want
And
to
if y'all
share.
didn't catch it, go back and
I just
rewind
want
it
to
because
share.
she just gave us a word. I love it. That just touched me. That's where I'm at. Seeing myself as
We
God
gotta
sees
do
me, as
it,
He created.
Jasmine. We have to see
Yes.
that. That's the mission that I'm on. I want lives to change. We have to know. Listen, if He created us and made us in His image and His likeness, we are some bad creatures. But we don't know
Okay.
it. If we don't know it, we gotta tap
That part.
in. We have to tap into ourselves. And I know it may sound
Yeah,
arrogant. I know it might sound different. But if we don't do it, who will?
exactly. I love it. And on that note, y'all,
I
I
love
just want to
you.
say, it's not a lesson, it's a blessing. You have blessed my soul. I love it so much. I am so grateful for the time that we got to spend.
Hey,
And I might have to have you back. I feel like people gonna want some more words from you, Miss Debbie. So
I'm coming.
you dust yourself off and you get yourself ready because I feel like you're gonna have to come back
Okay.
and give us some more words.
Well, thank you for
Well, thank you so much.
having me.
You are welcome. All right, y'all. Till next
Bye-bye.
week. This is the Soulshine Podcast. And remember, if it's not a lesson, it's a blessing.